What's going on, y'all? KM Best here. I am going to do a ranking of every Series 4 and 5 card in the entire game. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. All right, let's get into the tier list. As you can see, we've set up some of these tiers. The top tier is going to be Elite Build-Around, the best cards in the game, doing the things the best cards in the game do. The second tier is a little bit more nebulous. Elite role players or like slightly sub-elite build-arounds. So there's going to be like some cards in there where it's like, this is not going in the best deck in the game as a build-around, but it's like, you know, a playable deck, a meta tier list type deck. Those cards are going to be in there. And there's going to be like solid build-arounds. Those are going to be for like less pedigreed cards where it's like, this is good, but it's never really been at the top of a metagame. It's been like a fun thing to do, but it's never just been like the best choice. These kind of decks, most likely rarely going to be decks you're going to have seen on my tier list. And of course you have solid role player. That's for the role player type cards that fill a role in a lot of different decks, but do it a little bit like worse than the elite role players. Of course, we also have a Na tier, which is just cards I would avoid, and Howard tier. And yes, I am actually doing this live on Twitch. If this ever makes its way to YouTube, I hope you enjoy what we're doing here. There is going to be like some amount of chat interaction during this, maybe, possibly. We'll see if I get around to it, edit it out. But as you can see, the follow notification popped up there. Of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, do follow me on Twitch. Thank you. We are going to start with Alioth, who has the wrong stat line here, but that's fine. We are gonna put Alioth, I think. Hold on, actually, KX, do you think I should put chat under me? Is that a really good idea? Or is that a really bad idea? I can do it. As long as you guys promise to be nice. Okay? If you promise to be nice, I'll put chat here, okay? Y'all gonna be nice? Okay. We're going to start with Alioth. He has the wrong stats on here. I am torn between these two spots for new Alioth. He is somewhere between a solid build-around and a solid role player. My instinct is to put him in solid build-around here, because I think if you're playing new Alioth, you're not just throwing him in to answer some stuff, you're doing things to make him good. I think he's a bit more of a card that you are building towards now, like whether that be with like Jean Grey or things like that. I don't think any of the things you do with him are particularly phenomenal right now, but I mean, today I lost to just an Alioth and a Thanos deck. Like, you can still play him. I think the issue with like putting him in solid build around, like I think these two tiers are pretty nebulous, so he's gonna stay in solid build around for now. He's gonna go maybe lower if he has to. I'm not exactly sure. Next up is Annihilus. Elite build around, absolutely phenomenal, incredible, as good as it gets. So good that I think if I have one worry about making this right now, it's that I think this card is actually likely to get nerfed and will make this like a thing I'll have to redo. Like, I may end up having to cut in here in the future and be like, yo, they nuked Annihilus, ignore this. That's entirely possible. But at the time of recording, which is like late Saturday, early Sunday, this is the probably, maybe not the best card in the game, but as far as build-arounds, probably the strongest build-around in the game. Annihilus, Prophex, Sentry, Cannonball is the core to, like, probably I would say most of the dominant decks right now, and Annihilus is very important in that. Obviously, he's great at clogging the opponent. Obviously, White Widow helped that. Obviously, the metagame positioning of Clog as a deck that is good against combo helped that too. But yeah, that's just a very easy one for me. Next up is Baron Zemo, and I think he goes in solid role player. You could argue he gets bumped up to solid build around. I'm not really a mill believer, right? Like, I do not particularly think the mill deck is good or anything like that. But I guess that's what solid means, right? Like, the gap between build-arounds and role players here is a little bit nebulous, so I'm just going to let it be nebulous, and if we have to, like, make some further differentiations, we will make some further differentiations in the future, right? So right now, I would say this is a solid build around, a fine card, but not one that I would go out of my way to get. Very much mostly goes in mill decks. Mill decks are mostly not that great, but they are playable. And I think making mill playable is like kind of a borderline miracle. So shout out to Baron Zemo for that. He's a solid card. He did his job well, but there are way higher priority targets than this guy. Ooh, Black Knight's really difficult. Black Knight, I think, goes in... God, I'm putting him in solid role player here because I don't think I've seen a dedicated Black Knight deck that's actually good in a long ass time, which means he is a Hela rotation piece. He's like the Patrick Beverly of Hela, where it's like, are we sure this makes it better? No, but we play it and he runs around out there doing nothing, right? Next up is Beta Ray Bill. Solid build around. I would say probably I like the Thor deck more than I like Baron Zemo. You do need Jane Foster and the other Thor to build around Beta Ray Bill, but you do need him for that. He does have a defined role. I think the Thor deck is a good deck right now because it is able to play a Sarah control type game plan, but also is able to not get entirely owned by Professor X strategies because of cards like Beta Ray Bill. I think that's like a very reasonable spot for me to have Beta Ray. I think he's higher right now than he would be in most other situations. Next up is Black Swan, who is just going straight into the nah tier. Just absolutely not. Black Swan is just not good, and I think one of the big lessons I learned from her is that you might look at her and say that's a 3/5 with upside, and you'd say the same thing about Baron Zemo, but what's actually happening here is like, these are 3/5s with upside, but they come associated with like massive deck building cost. And in the case of Black Swan, the massive deck building cost is you need to play a lot of 1-drops to make her make sense, and I just don't think there's any good decks that actually want to do that right now. And that puts her in the nah tier. Chad is mentioning like she needs a buff, and it's like, what do you want her to do? Be a 3/7? Like, I don't really know how you buff this card with a straight face. I just don't. Next up is Blob, who I'm actually tempted to put here. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm tempted to put Blob in nah. I think he probably goes in solid role player, because as bad as Thanos may be, I do think he is still a key card in that deck, but I'm pretty tempted to put him there. I think one of the real failings of Second Dinner with Blob is that when it was nerfed, and even before it was nerfed, this is a card that is just like, it only goes in one deck, and now it only goes in one deck anyway, and that deck is a lot worse. And so I you could talk me into the nah here, but I have still seen people playing Thanos. Chad is suggesting I need a mid tier to go between solid role player and nah. I think I will do that, actually. I think that's a good idea. This one is going to be, we're going to have mid here, and it's going to be even yellower if that's possible. Be this, yeah. Yeah. So we're going to put Blob there. I think that's where Blob goes. That's where Zemo should go. No, Mill is actually playable. Like, as much as I hate to say it, like, Mill is a playable deck, and that is a lot due to Baron Zemo, and, you know, it's not my favorite deck, but it's playable, right? Next up is Caiera, who is also going in the mid tier. Caiera also going in the mid tier. A fine to good card, but the fact that there are a bunch of decks out there right now playing like Squirrel Girl Mockingbird stuff, and Caiera's not in any of them, is a bit of an indictment of whether or not a card like that is ever really worth running, right? Like, there are people who are doing stuff that is good in a space that she would seem to make sense, and it's just not really including her. It doesn't need to include her. And that is a very awkward situation, I think. Next up is Cannonball, who is one of the best cards in the game. Elite build around. The nexus of Cannonball and Professor X carries so many bad decks right now. This is a combination Alioth / Shang-Chi. You win a lane with Professor X, you are within 8 in another lane, you Cannonball, you win. That is what this card is right now. And you can also, because he is 5, you play Cannonball with Titania, you play Cannonball with a Demon from the Hood, you play Cannonball with, like, there's just so much, right? This guy is absolutely phenomenal. A million people missed on this guy. I'm one of those people. And, you know, just, I will say something in defense of myself and others who missed on Cannonball. Alioth wasn't out yet, and the metagame was not what it was. This card released in the midst of Thanos, and I think it's a little unfair to throw, like, hey, why did you guys miss on Cannonball when everyone was just playing Thanos, which is just clearly better than everything else? So I do think that there is, like, some argument there for it's like, you know, this card got underrated on release, which I think is true, but also I think there's a lot of stuff where people are like, oh my god, I can't believe everyone missed on this. It's like, well, yeah, Thanos was good, and it's not exactly what Thanos is doing at the time. Corvus Glaive. I am torn between here and here. But I think I honestly have to put Corvus Glaive in the elite role player / slightly sub-elite build around here. Hela is not a deck without this card. Hela is not a deck without Corvus Glaive. You do not play Hela without this card. Hela is a playable deck, and it is entirely down to this guy. So that is where he's going. That is just straight up where he's at. That's just, I don't want to do it, right? Like he outside of that, he mostly sees play in like normal discard builds that are interested in just what he's doing generally. Discarding 2 cards is good. If you have like a swarm or whatever in your hand, you're just like totally fine with that. But yeah, he is the only reason Hela exists. Ergo, he's in that category. Cull Obsidian, I think, is actually going to be better than the other Thanos cards. I have seen Zoo decks playing this card. I have lost to this card way more than I've lost to a Blob or Caiera. When you compare Cull Obsidian and Caiera, Cull Obsidian is actually still seeing play. Caiera, even in those decks that you'd think it would go in, is not. A 4/10 is still very good. I think this is a solid role player, and arguably you could bump it up to solid build around. I'm not exactly sure if I would, but you could. Daken going straight into the mid tier. That's a very mid card. I've played him recently. He's fine. He's mid. You put him in discard some of the time. You put him in, decks that are playing Silver Samurai some of the time, right? But that's kind of it. And he's kind of like a 3/8 some of the time. And it's like, okay, like that's fine, but it's not like, whoa, I need to have that. Like, he's a very relatively niche card, even in the archetypes he plays in. And I don't think he's bad. I think he's probably like, if you made me put him anywhere, he's like the front of the mid tier, right? Like, we're going to try to do these in order. I think that means we do this as well. He's like the front of the mid tier, but I don't think he's that, when he's in your deck, he's like the 12th or 11th card in your deck basically every time. Darkhawk is going into solid build around. There are plenty of Darkhawk decks where I think you could argue, solid build around, solid role player for Darkhawk, because he's not necessarily always the star, but he's usually like a pretty important piece, just a big guy that has synergy with the rocks. The rocks can be good or bad, depending on, how that goes for you. I think I would say Darkhawk probably ends up at the front of this, if I had to guess, in terms of that. But like, there's very little delineation between build around and role player in my mind when it comes to solid, at least. Echo goes, good lord, this is actually really tough. Solid role player or mid? I think I'm forced to put Echo in mid. She is a barely playable card that you will see a very small amount of the time, and you simply just do not see her enough for me to honestly say this card is worth playing. However, she does do very cool things. I think she just has to be in mid. Elsa Bloodstone is an elite build around. Elsa Bloodstone Hope Summers, Kitty Pryde, absolutely elite build around. That it's all a package. I think this is the one thing that really bothered me about doing this kind of content, which is all of this is a package, right? Like, you have Cannonball Prophex, you have Annihilus Censure, you have Elsa, Kitty, Angela, Hope. They're all packages, right? Saying one of them is the build around is not fair, so I'm going to put the entire package in the tier. But that said, the Elsa package is 100% elite. Like, absolutely, without question, elite build around. Galactus. I am going to put Galactus... See, I'm torn, right? I think he just goes in nah. I'm pretty sure this card is just terrible. I'm pretty sure this card is just bad. But people love him, and so you'll see people playing him. People are saying Elsa what? Elsa Elite, that's a hot take. She is in every Angela deck. And that means she's in every Loki deck. The best Loki decks are cutting Hope and keeping Elsa. That's like not even actually a conversation I'm willing to entertain. Elsa is super elite right now. She is very, 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 very good. That whole package is sort of hard to extract from each other, but Angela, Kitty, Elsa, every Loki deck, and Loki absolutely does want that. You could argue that she goes like here, I guess, but if she did, she'd go at the top of here. We'll come back to this package maybe a bit later, I think. But yeah, Galactus, this card's not good and is a card that I kind of think should never be allowed to be good. And so it's staying at the bottom because it sucks. Oh, while I'm at it though, when I talk about these cards in terms of the package, that means that you don't just pick them up on their own, you pick them up as part of building towards the package, right? And that means that you need to be in a situation where if you pick up Elsa, you have the other stuff to play with it. At least Kitty, right? If you don't do that, you are going to end up using the card poorly and you're going to regret it. Anyway. Ghost Spider is a solid role player. It's never more really than a role player, but Ghost Spider is good in Phoenix Force decks and is sort of hard to replace in Phoenix Force decks, making her just like a very good, solid role player in those decks. She is far from, I would say, the thing that makes the deck go, but she plays a very solid complementary role in that deck. Gladiator, I think, I can't tell if he's here or here. I can't tell if Gladiator is here or here. This is a difficult one for me. If I had to guess, I would say he goes in elite role player. But I could be being a little bit generous here. Gladiator is a 3/8, which means that a lot of the time when you are just looking for the best 3-drop to play, he ends up being that card. His downside is notable and prominent, and I think that does make him like an elite role player if he's like just like the default good 3. But there's more competition than there was for slots now. Like, people are just able to play Red Guardian instead of Gladiator and have like some more upside and less downside. And I think that that is a generally good spot for him, just like he's probably going to end up towards the bottom of this. Grandmaster is going in the nah tier. Grandmaster just it has 0 power, and I've never seen it do anything that's like even remotely exciting. And it's super duper sad. And I really don't know what to tell you about Grandmaster other than like, man, this card probably has like a 40% win rate. Like, this card sucks. Next up is Havok. I played a Havok deck today, and I think that's going to make me want to put him in mid, because at least he's like a 2/8, right? Like, I had some Havok wins today. Let me put it this way. I have one more games with Havok than I have with Grandmaster. I have one more games with Havok than I have with Black Swan. And so I'm going to put him in mid. You know, I think I'm just going to, out of due deference to Havok, it's going in there, I think. But just that this is probably going to end up near the bottom of that. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I'd like to replace this card. I'll work on replacing this card, but it worked out pretty okay. Specifically in the context of Hope Summers, Ravonna Renslayer. Havok was like, oh, okay, you know, that's not that bad. It was a way to bridge the Angela stuff with the Professor X stuff. Hercules. Good lord. This is my first real deliberation between these two tiers. This is my first real deliberation between these two tiers. Where we're just like, is this a nah or is this a Howard? It's probably a Howard. My instinct is Hercules is a Howard. Which sucks, because, like, a 4-7 is, like, good on rate. It's just, I think the issue I have with Hercules is, if I were to build a move deck that is anything close to competitive right now, it probably doesn't involve him. Which I think means that he's Howard, right? If he's, like, not even playable in his own archetype, that's a Howard, all right? That's a Howard. Next up is High Evolutionary. Going in elite role player / slightly sub-elite build-around. High Evo is a slightly sub-elite build-around, but what High Evo's major upside is that he can get you a good deck very early. Like, you kind of only need High Evo to play High Evo decks, and they're worse than they were probably the last time I did this tier list. There's just more and more powerful stuff going on right now. But they are still okay and around. It's not something I'd super recommend doing, but it's a great budget pickup. Chat is saying that's not true. There's a serious move out there where Herc is a star. The best move deck I've played with and against is the one that uses Beast and Taskmaster to create very large units on the thing. And Hercules doesn't even go in that. And so if I'm looking at this and saying, all right, the best move deck I could possibly play, keep in mind this is an archetype that is not very good, and I'm saying the best one that you can play doesn't even involve this guy, I'm keeping him where he is. He could be at the top of Howard, but he's a Howard. Lokan, this is not a discussion, brother. We're not going to debate. I'm not going to debate you in chat during the tier list. I'm doing a thing right now. I'm not going to have a debate with you about whether or not move is good. Because it's not. Hitmonkey. Bottom of mid, I think. It's really... one of the funnier things that has happened recently is... people were like, I can't believe they nerfed Alioth. Everyone's just going to go back to throwing priority and playing Hitmonkey. And it's like, guys, I don't know if you're aware of this. This card is not that good. This card is like a 312 at best when you nut off. It's like, this is just not a very good card. This is legitimately not good. It is so far different from what... The game is so different from when this card was last good, and this card was like a 2-0 last time it was good, right? Like, he is a... I can bump him to here, but he's like the bottom of here. This is so mid. This is such a mid card. I feel like he has to be in the mid tier. I feel like he has to be in the mid tier. Like, I'm gonna put him here. I'm gonna put him here. Hope Summers. Elite build around. Not even close. Elite build around, probably above Elsa. One of the best cards in the game. Absolutely monstrous and phenomenal. Just really unbelievably good card. Kind of unbelievable. Like, this card reminds me of Zabu, where it's like, we're gonna live with this card for like a year, and it's never gonna have a win rate that's like too good, but it's just gonna be like there the whole time. We're gonna be sitting there like, and then when it gets nerfed, we're gonna be like, how did we live with this for a year? That's what I feel about Hope Summers. It's like, it's never, the numbers are never gonna justify a nerf on this card, probably, but she's just gonna be a permanent presence. She's gonna be everywhere. Hope might be in front of the other two. Yeah, I mean, I could see that, honestly. I could see that. Like, I think I could see that. I think I could see this if I like were, I could see any order, I think, right? Like, where do we think Hope is going? Because I think any of these three could be one. We're going to put her there for now and then revisit it later, I think. Next up is Howard the Duck, which pretty clearly goes in Howard tier. Not a lot of conversation there. Next up is Iron Lad. Iron Lad's in a weird spot right now, I'm not going to lie. Iron Lad's in a really weird spot right now, where I think if I had to ballpark him, he ends up like here. He ends up like here, but with like some possible going lower in there, where it's like, this is a card that was in a lot of decks as a Zabu pair, right? Like this is a card that went with Zabu most of the time. And part of the reason Iron Lad was good was because you could play it on turn 3 after a Zabu, and it wasn't like Shang-Chi-able. You didn't need to save it for later. It was just like a good card to play. And I gotta say right now, he's just like, he's fine. You see him in like some, I guess I'd say you see him in like some lockdown decks, like storm type decks, you'd see him. You see him in some like Living Tribunal decks. I think I want to put him bottom of build around rather than top of role player here. Because I do think he's like meaningfully better than these cards, probably, but I could just be biased a little bit. And maybe where he's supposed to be is there. Maybe. Who knows? Next up is Jean Grey. Hasn't been updated for the stats. I apologize. I actually think she's like here or here. Maybe top of mid, bottom of solid role player. If I had to guess, I would say she's bottom of solid role player. But maybe she ends up top of mid instead. So you see Jean Grey in like, there's a Spectrum deck that's running around that's like pretty solid. There are, and that's really kind of it, but like people have tried to use her to counter Hela before. She's like an okay card. But I think if I had to guess, she goes in mid and probably above the X Thanos cards if I had to figure it out. I think she goes above the X Thanos cards. Next up is Jeff. I realize Jeff is not a build-around. I am distinctly aware that Jeff is not a build-around. I get it. But also, he's in like 45% of the decks at top 10% infinite. So he's going at the top of this tier list no matter what. I could create another tier just for Jeff, and it would be 100% justifiable. This is the easiest, best 2-drop to pick up in the entire game. There is, like, he can go anywhere. Yeah, he could go in his own tier. If I wanted to put Jeff in his own tier, I could. And I think that this is a card that is in probably half of the good decks in the game. He is the best you're ever going to see. And I think he transcends being an elite build-around to just being in every deck. Like, normally there are not cards that transcend being an elite build-around. Normally that's the best you can be. But Jeff is better than that. He is in everything. Next up is Kang, the Conqueror, who is going fast into the Howard tier, baby. Right into the Howard tier. That's not a good card. I think that's really all I need to say. Kitty Pryde is bottom of elite build-around. This is one of the things I was running into, where it's like, Hope, Kitty, Elsa, kind of one package. You kind of need all of them, right? But she is absolutely, undeniably elite. She's as good as it gets. And chat is now yelling about Kang being more playable than Howard. No, I actually think Kang is a more playable than Howard. I actually do think that. Maybe I'm wrong. But I do think Kang is a little more playable than Howard. Okay. Kitty Pryde is, I mean, like, I don't know how many times I can say it. I've said it for every other member of the package. This is an elite package. Hope, Kitty, Elsa, phenomenal. Goes with your Angela, phenomenal. The basic point slam core to most decks in Marvel Snap right now is that. If you are not playing that, you are playing Annihilus Sentry or Prophex Cannonball or both. If you are not doing any of those things, you are playing a combo deck. I really can't say it any easier than that. Next up is Knull. And Knull is somewhere here. But I think we're going to put him in solid build around, where you don't play Destroy without this card, but you can. I have seen people play no Knull Destroy, like KX4N and Emily. There have been multiple builds of like Control Destroy with Prophex Cannonball or with Mockingbird. Knull is less required for this deck than some of the other cards in it. Like X23, for example. Those are better cards. I think Knull is going to end up here. Probably above Beta Ray Bill. Somewhere in that ballpark. This is the hardest one to order, I'm not going to lie. Next up is Lady Deathstrike. And I'm not going to lie to you, chat. My first instinct with this card is I want to put her here. I want to put her here. I want to put her here. I feel like she goes here. She is so damn good. And a lot of that is because of Annihilus context, right? If someone is sending stuff over to you, she is like the best answer in the game for that crap, right? So like right now she's just farming. Just a great card right now. But I think of all the cards on here, I would warn you that she is probably the most context dependent. Like, you know, in the event of an Annihilus nerf, a Sentry nerf, a nerf to like that kind of shit, she is the card that will see her utility decrease because she's basically Shang-Chi for that, right? Like, she is effectively the Shang-Chi for Annihilus decks. And that's really good. The reason she's up here also, though, is because she's the Shang-Chi that Annihilus decks can run. And so, like, there's this whole other thing happening where, like, you'll have your Annihilus, sure, but then if you miss your Annihilus, you still have her to win those lanes. And she's just like, she's really good. She does a lot of stuff here. I gotta tell you, this card right here having 4 power, if this card right here had 3 power, Lady Deathstrike might be the best card in the game, right? Like, if this card right here had 3 power, there is a reasonable shot Lady Deathstrike is like the best card in the game. That 4th power on Hope Summers is shockingly real. Like, that is some real. Like, that is... Because, like, you imagine, like, all those pixie decks that are, like, accelerating out of Deathstrike. They're, like, Deathstriking on 4. They blow up a Hope Summers, too. Gross. Imagine that. Legion. Oh, I want to say solid role player, probably top of solid role player. I want to say Legion is probably top of solid role player, maybe below Iron Lad. Maybe below Cull Obsidian. I think he ends up there. Where it's like, this is a good card. Also, the more I look at this, the more I want to drag Alioth down. Like, I think Alioth ends up there. Legion is a good card. But there's so much competition at his slot right now that he just doesn't seem play, right? Like, when you look at what the stuff on this deck is, right? Like, that's a 5. That's a 5. That's a 5. That's a 5. There's just a lot of competition for this guy. Like, there's just a lot of really good 5s. And you can't, like, run that many, right? Like, there are decks that play 4/5s, and those are mostly, like, if you run into a deck playing 4/5s, it's like, Professor X, Cannonball are 2 of them. Annihilus is another one, right? And so, like, maybe there's a Lady Deathstrike in there. You're probably looking at a Pixie deck, right? Like, the decks that are playing 4/5s, maybe one of them is Mockingbird, right? But, like, this is not a card that used to have very little competition, but they've made a lot of really good 5s recently. And this is not a card that is held up in the face of those new cards, I think. Next up is Loki. I mean, oh, this one's hard. Because, like, he's up here. he's one of these cards, right? That's undeniable to me. The question is whether he's, like, here or, like, here. I think the way I see it is he's currently here. I think this is the way I see it. Where the justification for this logic is, all right, we have Jeff here, he's in everything, right? We have Hope Summers here, who is in a lot of different mid-range decks. We have Loki here, who is just that good. Cannonball is new Alioth. Annihilus is, like, you could convince me either way on this. If I had to ballpark it, I would say Annihilus above Cannonball, but it's really close. And then these two are just kind of like hanging on as part of the package, but they're very good, right? Like you could bump them down to here, and we might do that in the future. I'm not really sure. It's possible we bump Elsa and Kitty down. I'm not 100% on that. But this is sort of, I think this looks about right to me. Loki is, at any point in time, Loki could very easily be the best deck in the game. There's not as many Mobiuses running around right now. It's good into the Annihilus decks. It's pretty okay into the Cannonball decks. It's just very good. Loki's major issue is it gets absolutely mollywopped by combo, and it has just no lines into combo decks. Like, it just doesn't, like, it's usually like either the best mid-range deck or the mid-range deck that beats the other mid-range decks. But it gets mollywopped by combo, and even the clog stuff is kind of good into it, depending on, like, what you get off the Loki, to the point that it's like, this is okay, good, but I don't know if I can reasonably be like, that's that much better. There's a question of hope, right? Because hope is not always run in Loki. And I think you could argue, like, if we wanted to get real with it, we could do this and then say this is all a package being graded at the same thing. Right? Like, we could just say, like, this is all a package. You just do that. That makes sense to me as well. I think this is fine for me. I did say we'd revisit Hope. We've revisited Hope. Man-Thing, going in the mid-tier, but probably the top end of the mid-tier, actually. People play this card. Like, he's not amazing, but with US Agent out now after the buff, and, like, Luke Cage Man-Thing decks with, like, ongoing synergy, it's a thing. I don't have a good read on how good that stuff actually is, so I'm gonna hedge a little here and put him in mid, but I do think I've seen him more than, like, all the rest of this crap, for sure. Martyr, that's a Howard. That's a Howard. You could maybe argue she's the best Howard. I would listen if you wanted to argue that she was the best Howard. She's probably the best Howard. Sure. You can talk, yeah, sure, she's the best Howard. That's fine. Okay, yeah. Meek, gonna end up at the front of this, actually, I think. Maybe next to Knull. Maybe next to Knull. Maybe next to Knull. Meek is a little less required for his deck than Knull is for his, I think. I think we'll put Meek here. Meek is a little less required for discard than Knull is for destroy. So I think Meek's going to end up here. Obviously, it kind of only goes in discard. Like, if we're being real, it's only a discard card, so there it is. Mirage is going to go in solid role player, I think. You can just replace her with Cable. Like, you can replace her with Cable, you can replace her with Sentinel. She's pretty good, but you don't need her. With Valentino when that comes out, there's just a bunch of stuff, right? Just a bunch of stuff. Mobius is, I'd probably say Mobius is an elite role player. I'd probably say Mobius is an elite role player. This card shows up a lot. It combines with Pixie to be a very good thing. It is a great tech against Loki, which is kind of everywhere. There's a lot of decks that are just free rolling cost reduction where Mobius is good too. Yeah, Mobius is, like, I think, elite role player category for sure. Mockingbird. I'm not going to lie to you. I think Mockingbird is an elite build around. I think everyone forgot about this card, And they shouldn't have, because she's super messed up. This is still a ridiculous card. Yes, Thanos is gone. You play her in like Mysterio decks and she's a 2/9. That's nuts. You play her like she goes in like there are decks that are playing Shauna Mysterio right now, which sounds like total ass and is total ass, except for the fact that it's totally carried by Mockingbird. Mockingbird is that good. Like, this is a card that is a sincerely powerful card. Absolutely monstrous. This is a very, very good card. It is, like, you could talk me into this. You could talk me into that, I think. I think that's actually where I'm going to be at. You can talk me into that. I think that's where Mockingbird ends up. That's pretty scary. She is damn good. MODOK, a slightly sub-elite build around. Discard is great. I really enjoy it, and you absolutely need MODOK for it. I think we need to vet the slightly sub-elite build around. This category is a little nebulous. You need this for Hela. You need this for discard. You need this for Haivo. What we're going to do is sort of split it up, I think. Where we're going to have slightly sub-elite build around and then elite role player. I think that's what has to happen here. So we're going to do elite role player. And we're going to put 1, 2, 3 in there. And just to make it clear, it's going to be the exact same color as slightly sub-elite build around. Just to be clear, like, what's happening here, where it's like, this is an elite role player. These two categories are, like, if I could have these two next to each other, I would. But I can't. So I'm doing it like this, but they are equivalent and they should be thought of as equivalent, right? Ms. Marvel. Ooh, I would say she's like a slightly sub-elite build around. I think she's really good, but I think she ends up going in elite role player because she's just like good stats. It's close. I think she's one of these cards, but she's just like sort of generically strong. And that is a good thing to be. But she doesn't have a ton of great homes right now because of the preponderance of like clog stuff. She's just in an awkward spot. Because of all the clog stuff, she's in an awkward spot, but she's still, I think, very good and not necessarily a card that should be underrated. Next up is Nebula. Nebula is an elite role player. Nebula is absolutely an elite role player. Goes in just a ton of stuff. Like, well, not really a ton of stuff. I should rephrase that. Nebula is an elite role player who goes in a lot of clog decks. This is not a card that is going in other archetypes. This is a clog card, right? But in those decks, she's not what the deck is built around. She is playing a role in clog. So that's what's going on there. That's the thing that's happening there. Yeah, lockdown, sure. Like lockdown, clog. Are you playing Professor X? Are you filling up their lanes? You're playing Nebula. All right, that's pretty much how it goes. Nico Minoru is an elite role player. Elite role player for sure. In discard, in like mid bounce decks, she's just very good at a lot of different stuff. You play her she's like a competitor for slots in so many different decks. She is an elite role player who is, a lot of her power is concentrated in drawing 2 cards, don't get me wrong, but her other stuff is useful too. And I think that the obvious thing for her in a destroy, I said discard earlier, that's my bad. Destroy is her obvious synergy, and she's always going to be good there. Nimrod is a solid role player and probably the best of them. And it feels hard for me to say this because Phoenix Force is a good deck, and Nimrod is part of what really makes him a good deck. But I am more down on PF than I have been in the past, or just any combo deck. And I think that means that Nimrod ends up in solid role player because of where I'm at on how PF is good. PF is a good deck, but not well positioned into a world of a million Profexes, and that is the world we're into. Just kind of is what it is. Phoenix Force is another one where it's like, Phoenix Force itself is going in solid build around, right? Probably the best of them. But I don't really have an opinion of Phoenix Force beyond this is solid. It'll be on a tier list. It's a solid deck, but I think you can probably do better in most cases, right? It's a good, solid deck, but I would say it's far from meta-defining right now. And I think that's sort of where I'm at, because Phoenix Force, I like it. I want to like it, but I think the best way to describe it is solid. And I do think the fact that it just like is a deck in and of itself is enough for me to put it there. But like, and for the record, PF, that's another Nico deck, right? And I think this is about right. I don't like it, but I think it's probably the closest to being correct. Next up is Pixie. And I'm really kind of torn on this, because all indicators are that Pixie is currently a slightly sub-elite build around. There's some really good Pixie decks running around out there. However, the issue with Pixie stuff, when you talk about like slightly sub-elite build arounds, almost all the Pixie decks are playing like Cannonball, Mockingbird, Lady Deathstrike, Annihilus, and it's hard for me to extricate how good she is from how good they are. The way Pixie is used is as a like mild cheat card. It's not flipping 1s and 6s, it's flipping 5s around. That said, I think the deck is very good, and so I'm going to put her in a slightly sub-elite build-around role. And put her in slightly sub-elite build-around. I think that's where she goes. I think that it's because it's so hard for me to extricate her power from specifically the power of Annihilus. That's why she's there, but this is a card that has a lot of variance into it. A, she's new. B, it's like we're only now figuring out how to use her. I think she's powerful, but it's hard to extricate her from Annie. Proxima Midnight is going next to MODOK. Well, if you're talking about cards to, maybe it's an elite role player. Where are we? I kind of think you don't play discard without Proxima Midnight. That's sort of where I'm at. You just don't play the deck without her. If you don't have Proxima Midnight, you shouldn't be playing discard. And I think yeah, I think I'm talking myself into this. She goes there, right? Like, this is if you want to play Apocalypse discard, you get MODOK, you get Proxima. That's what you need. If you want to spice up your Apocalypse discard, you go get Meek. There you go. Ravonna Renslayer is somewhere between here and here, I think. Somewhere between mid and role player. I think we're going to put her in role player, and I think she's a pretty good role player. Ravonna has some extra synergies right now thanks to Profex. So Ravonna is just like a solid, good card to have lying around. You have both Goblins and Professor X. However, I typically think that those builds of Clog end up being the worst builds of Clog, but it's fine, right? Like, I don't think they're the best builds of Clog. I think mostly every other build of like an Annihilus deck is probably better than the one with Ravonna in it, but there's nothing wrong with it per se. Next up is Red Guardian. Red Guardian is an elite role player. I would be tempted to put him here, I think. Actually, if I had to say, be like this? I think it'd be like that, right? Maybe it's actually like this. I think that ordering makes a little more sense to me. Where Red Guardian is just like, this is an excellent card. It goes in a ton of stuff, but you don't need it in order to play any of that stuff. You're playing it in a lot of good cards decks, right? Like, I play it in a lot of good cards decks. But it's very replaceable. It's like a luxury purchase. This card is good and is very good even. But if you wanted to play like Polaris instead, it would not be key to the functioning of the deck the way something like any of these are, right? Like, these are cards you need to make the deck function. These are cards that are nice to have. Red Hulk, this still has the nerf thing on it, but I mean, I feel like he's at least in this tier, if not the highest of this tier. I think Red Hulk is probably the highest of the elite role player tier. Yeah, Red Hulk is the highest of the elite role player tier, I think for sure. And that is just sort of where he's at. This is currently a 9 power instead of the 11 you see on the screen, but like he's still just like the biggest 6. He's just great. You proc him twice. Yeah, you proc him twice, you're good. Yeah, exactly. Sebastian Shaw, probably if I had to guess, bottom of solid role player. You do need this guy to play Silver Surfer. You do need this guy to play Silver Surfer. But are you really going to want to play Silver Surfer? Probably not. So that's where he's going. Selene. That's a Howard. This is a Howard. I don't even know where in the Howard it is. It's probably like here. That's a Howard. Selene is a Howard. We're in a clog meta. This card is still unplayable. Gross. just really nothing to say about that other than gross. Silk is gonna go probably at the top of solid role player. I like the Silk decks. Actually, I don't like this. Like, I like the Silk decks when I cut Silk from them. Hold on. Where does she go? Where does she go? Because it's like, oh, you want to buy her so you can play the Craven stuff with Angela? Well, that shit sucks. Do anything else, it's better. Ooh, maybe she goes at the bottom of this. Ooh, yeah, she's like the worst card in the decks that you play her in. Yeah. Yeah, I think she goes here. Silver Samurai is... I'm torn between mid and nah. I'm torn between mid and nah here. If I had to guess, he's like in the mid tier here. I had to guess. You can sometimes play him in Hella decks. There are some Daken decks that are using stature right now that give him like a little bit of things to do. He's okay. I think that's the best way to say. He's okay. Scar. Oh boy. Oh boy. When you talk about cards that got like totally invalidated, one of the biggest complaints I think I see with Second Dinner's balancing is that when they get rid of a deck that people really invested in, it feels super bad to have invested in it. And Scar is one of those cards where I have seen every card in mid more than I have seen Scar recently. And that just sucks. It just sucks. Snowguard goes in elite role player. You buy this card to play Loki, and then you play Loki with her. That's pretty much what you're doing here. That is what this card is about. Spider-Ham. I'm pretty high on Ham right now, if I had to guess. I think I'm pretty high on Ham here, yeah. Spider-Ham is in a lot of the dedicated Pixie decks. That is the main reason that I'm high on Ham here. A lot of the dedicated Pixie decks do this thing where they run like a one-drop package of like Hood, Iceman, Spider-Ham, Nico. All of which are good and disruptive cards, but if you Pixie, they all flip those costs onto something else. And I mean, like, you could say he ends up in solid role player. I think, like, the fact that I am making this in the temporal time that I am making it right now indicates that it ends up in elite role player. But if I wanted this to be more accurate going forward, I would put it in solid. So I think I'm going to put it in solid. It's like right now, for this very specific moment of time, it probably is here. But because I want this to be accurate, I'm going to put it here. Next up is Supergiant, who is a solid role player right now. Yep, just a solid role player. Supergiant decks have been doing pretty okay recently. And she's obviously a pretty important part of a Supergiant deck, right? Like, you kind of need her to do that, I think. That's an important thing for sure, is that you have this card to do Supergiant stuff with. I think that's pretty good. And so we are going to We're gonna put that there, I think. I think that's where we're at with it. Doesn't that make her a build-around then? You know what? You're right, chat. That does make her a build-around. She is in the solid build-around tier. Also, I'm gonna move Alioth down to solid role player. I'm gonna move Alioth down to solid role player. I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm gonna move Alioth down to solid role player. Supergiant hit rank 1. Like, what are we talking about here? Thanos. Oh, Jesus. Oh, I hate contemplating this, man. I don't know what to do with this. Oh, jeez. Come on. Oh, man. God damn it. I think he is better than people think he is. Let's start there. I think he's better than people think he is, but he's so much worse than what he used to be. I'm going to be real with you, chat. Chat's saying a bunch of things that I think are way off. I'm putting him in solid build-around. I'm putting him in solid build-around. He is. Like, chat, the reaction to Thanos has gone beyond what is actually being expressed in reality. I see more people playing Thanos than I see playing Legion. Any of this stuff. I see more people playing Thanos than doing most of this stuff. So that is where I'm at. And as much as it would be like, okay, you know, he totally sucks forever, I think it's a very high skill cap card now that is likely not to pay off, but has been at rank 1 this season. Like, it's hard for me to call him mid in that context. He is not a card I would ever recommend anyone play, but he is okay as a build-around. That's where he goes. Living Tribunal also going in solid build-around, I think. Living Tribunal going in solid build-around here, where this is a Tribunal decks suck. Okay, like, Tribunal decks actually just suck. They are terrible. I don't advise you play them. They get ruined by Clog. They get ruined by the newly buffed US Agent. They get ruined by Professor X. They get ruined by not drawing their shit right now. Hella Enjoyer himself, like the guy who brought this deck on the scene, is like, this deck sucks right now. It is not a good deck right now. It is still a build around. If you are a psycho, feel free. But this is sort of where the limitations of my tiers come in, where it's like, this is not good, but it is technically a build around, so this is where it's going to go. US Agent just got buffed, and I really don't know what to do with him here. I think instinctively I'm going to put him here, but this is just actually a hedge, right? I'm just going to put him like here. I have not felt like this card is very good. I think it's been fine. The numbers on it are quite strong, and I think it's gonna take some time for us to figure that out post buff, where it's like, this card could end up being absolutely amazing, right? I don't know if it's going to, because it got buffed like 2 days ago. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't have enough. I don't even know if, like, I don't have enough sample size of this guy. I just don't. War Machine. That's a nah. War Machine is a nah tier. I think he might be like the best of nah tier, but he's in nah tier. You could argue he's in mid tier, but I'm pretty sure he's in nah tier. I would say he's in like nah plus, right? Where it's like, this is a card with potential, but we're in a Profex meta now, and I just haven't seen this guy at all. We're in a heavy Profex meta. And I have played more Havok than I have played War Machine. I have literally played Havok more than this card. Yo, Woody just cooked US Agent deck. He did not cook that deck. That is TLSG's deck. I did some research. That's a TLSG deck. His curve is dog shit. War Machine, yeah, it super sucks. War Machine's curve super fucking sucks. Zabu got obliterated. It's a whole thing. US Agent and Man-Thing should be in the same tier. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Yeah, TLSG is back, by the way. Shout out TLSG. This is all going to be on YouTube. So yeah. You, where are we at with US Agent and Man Thing? I think US Agent, I'm hedging a little more. I think that's the honest answer. Is like, I'm afraid of being wrong on US Agent, so I'm hedging him a little bit higher. That's sort of where I'm at. Next up is Werewolf by Night, who is painfully bad right now. Oh, God, I don't know. Like, here. This card is mid. I don't really know what to. I don't really know what to say about it. Like, just like, you get clogged and you just cry. You are like the worst deck doing the things that you're doing. It like everyone else is playing Angela, you're playing 4-cost Angela, and it's just like, oh my god, why am I even bothering with 4-cost Angela right now? Like it's a painfully mid card. That is where I'm at with it. Next up is White Widow. And I'm not gonna lie to you, chat. My best instinct with this card is that she's here or here. Here or here. I think a lot of people are rating her very highly because she goes in a bunch of decks that are already really good. And I think she is a good card, a very good card, but not anywhere close to like Annihilus, Cannonball. Like these are the things that are the stars in her decks, right? These are the stars in her decks. She's probably above White Widow. Let's look at the order on Elite Role Player. Okay. The order on Elite Role Player. We probably put Nico up here. So she ends up here, if I had to guess. She ends up there, if I had to guess. I would say probably there. I had to say it. Next up is X23. X23 is a slightly sub-elite build-around. She's what I had in mind when I created the category, right? X23 is a slightly sub-elite build-around. This is a key card for Destroy. Way more key than Knull is. You can play Destroy without Knull. You cannot play Destroy without X23. I think that is, like, abundantly clear to me. This is just, she's absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely a beast. Someone in chat says wait. I won't wait, but I will wait for you to see what you have to say. I am not going to rank the unreleased based on feels. That is not what I do. I am already mad enough that people get mad at me for ranking stuff wrong when I don't know what it is. I'm not going to do that more. Zabu. Where's Luke Cage and Spider-Man 2099? Series 3. That's where they are. Good answer. Oh, God, what do we do with our poor little saber-toothed tiger? What do we do with our poor little saber-toothed tiger? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I don't want to do this to him. I don't want to do this to him. I don't want to do this to him. I don't want to put him in Howard tier. I don't want to do it. Why is Shauna not an elite card? Once again, because she's in Series 3. I am gonna say that he goes in Nah tier. I am gonna say that he goes in Nah tier. I do not think he is worse than the Grandmaster. And that is the delineation here. I do not think he is worse than the Grandmaster. So that's sort of where we're at with Zabu right now. I don't think he's worse than the Grandmaster. I don't think he's worse than the Grandmaster. So that is every card. Is he better than Swan? I think it's so close as to I don't want to figure it out. I think it's so close as to I don't want to figure out. Husky. What an intriguing raid. What an intriguing raid, Husky. Do you think, by chance, Mr. Husky, you'd be willing to do the timestamps on this fucking video? Like last time? We're doing it again, Husky, and we need you to do it again. Sure, I'm down. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Shout out to Husky Puppies. Is this going to be a YouTube vid? Yeah, I was going to do a tier list, but we ended up doing this instead because I told my chat, hey, chat, if you find a tier list for me that's updated, I'll do it. And now my fucking throat hurts. And so this is going to be tomorrow's video, and the tier list is going to be on Monday. And then 8 Cubes is just going to come out on Tuesday. I blew my voice doing this. Anyway, thank you, Husky. Thank you. Welcome, of course, everyone from Husky's channel. We are rating every series 4 and 5 card in Marvel Snap. And we just reached the end. So this is the part where we go back through. I'm shouting myself out as payment. Feel free. This is the part where we go back through and we do some vetting. Okay? We're going to do some vetting here. So, is there anything that anyone has a major objection to right here? Any major objections? I will try to go through as many as possible. High Evolutionary seems too high. Pixie is cope. Disagree. Jeff is good, but not really a build-around. Right. We discussed the Jeff is good, but not really a build-around thing. We decided that he would just have his own tier. Like, if I wanted to make my own tier for Jeff, it would. We can put him here if you want, but like he's easily the best card to buy. Easily the best in the game. Ravonna, kind of a build-around. I think I'm comfortable with the balance that I have there. I like Ravonna. I played a Ravonna deck today. I think she's good. You can run Hope without Elsa Kitty, but not the other way around. Wait, no, yeah, you can run Elsa Kitty without Hope. What are you talking about? Is Jeff really a build-around? Jeff is in his own tier. Like, imagine just like a line right here. Jeff is in his own tier. All right, do we actually have to make a Jeff tier? Is that the only way to get this to stop happening? Okay, fine. Fine, we'll make a Jeff tier. Literally just Jeff. There you go. We'll make a Jeff tier. I hope you're happy. An even more purple. Whoops. Actually, we're going to make Jeff this purple. And then Elite Build Around is going to be a slightly less purple, just to get the point across. There we go. Literally just Jeff. This is literally 45% of decks. There we go. All right, are you happy? Literally 45% of decks. Jeff. There you go. All right, I hope you're happy. Like, this is fine. All right, like, it's just like literally 45% of decks. All right, there it is. Okay. Howard is actually probably not the worst card in his own tier. Like, is Grandmaster worse than Howard? Probably. Selene is worse than Howard. Kang is probably better. Why is the bottom tier named Howard? Oh, you know why the bottom tier is named Howard. Oh, you know why the bottom tier is named Howard. Martyr should be one tier up on Ironically. I would listen to that. I don't hate her, really. I just think she kind of sucks. 98% of decks Shang-Chi tier. Jeff literally sees more play than Shang, and Shang is not in Series 4 or 5. Throw Valentina somewhere. No. Hercules better than bottom tier, but not by much. Nimrod better in PF than PF. I think that's kind of true, actually. But there are more PF decks than there are Nimrod decks. Is Grandmaster really the worst card in the game? No. Okay, what we can do is go like 1, 2, 3. Are we comfortable with this? Are we comfortable with this rebalance? This seems appropriate to me. This is appropriate to me. Selene over Howard. I don't think that's true. I really don't. Dexter was actually playing Howard. Like, I've never seen anyone successfully play Selene. GM is not Howard tier? Yes, he is. Grandmaster sucks. I have seen more people playing Howard the Duck than I have seeing playing Grandmaster or Selene. I have seen more people playing Howard the Duck than any of these other cards. Howard is okay in one deck with Spectrum. That is more decks than the others are okay in. Yeah, I want to drop Herc down. I want to drop Herc down here. Put Kang last. That's probably fine. That's probably fine. But yeah, let's not talk about the 5 worst cards in the game, okay? Let's talk about the other. No one's gonna care about those, okay? No one's gonna care about those. Talk about objections anywhere else, please. Talk about objections anywhere else. No one cares about the specific ordering of Howard the Duck and Kang in the bottom tier. Maybe MODOK up one? To be clear, no. MODOK is a slightly sub-elite build-around. He's exactly who I was thinking about when I constructed this section. I think the real question is, like, I think we could do this, and then we go this, right? And I think that ordering makes sense to me. Husky just rated us, which sucks because we're saying, you know, Corvus is effectively a proxy for Hela on this list, right? Is Hela better than normal discard? I don't think so, but maybe. Is it better than Destroy? Again, I don't think so, but maybe. And so it's like, I don't know where to put Corvus. Corvus can be either above MODOK or above X-23. Yes, Jimmy. It's solely on PF. That is where Ghost Spider is, where she is. Can we move Thanos to mid? No, I'm sorry, we can't. He's like kind of a cope build around, but he's still playable. I think I'll put Hela above normal discard, but below Destroy. I think that's where my head is at. Hela, where's Hela on my mind? Corvus Glaive here is a proxy for Hela, where it's just like, that is saying, like, you buy this to play Hela, right? Like, that's why he's in slightly sub-elite build around. He's just a proxy for Hela, basically. X-23 more important to destroy than Knull by a lot, yes. Pixie, I think the issue I have with Pixie is that it's hard to extricate her from the power of Annihilus, but her decks are very good. Her decks are actually very good. Is Haivo really good enough to be in slightly sub-elite? Probably not. But he's there as a concession to being budget, right? He's there as a concession to being budget. So I guess you could put him at the bottom of this. He's just like a very good budget pickup. I don't see how X-23 is so high. She's played in one deck as a role player, not a build around. Okay, I need to, like, explain something, I think. X-23 is the best card in Destroy. X-23 is, like, that deck is not playable without X-23. There is no competition. She is the best card in that deck. Like, you cannot play Destroy without that card. You cannot do it. There is nothing else in her range. Absolutely nothing else. You cannot do it. And same with Knull, though. No, like, there are people in the top, I think I'd say 200 and 100 that have been playing no Destroy Knull. No Knull Destroy. People have been doing that. I know Emily's been playing that. I know KX has been playing that. I know that, like, this is like a common thing. Like, these are people that are doing it in the top 100, top 150, top 250. Like, this is a thing. And that involves X-23 and does not involve Knull at all. Yeah, like Junk Destroy. Like Junk Destroy. Or Mockingbird Destroy. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Exactly, R.S. Berry. Exactly. Exactly, Sixation. Well, I'm recognizing a lot of people from Ladder in my chat right now. What's going on, y'all? But yeah, this is just, it's very, very, very straightforward, I think. Does anyone have any other further major large objections? Because I'm afraid to check how long this video has gone. Jesus Christ, it's an hour and 15 minutes. Holy. Oh my God. It's an hour and 15 minute video. All right, cool. Cool. Oh my God. That's so bad. That's so bad. That's so bad. All right. I think we've pretty much settled it. So this is sort of where I'm at here. I think we've pretty much settled it. I think I'm mostly okay with how this looks. Like, there are some, like, ordering quibbles. But, other than that, I think I'm basically fine with how this ends up being. Yeah, there are a lot of, like, this is, I will say, one of the things that really sticks out about this is probably the best distribution of cards we've ever had. This is probably the best distribution of cards we've ever had. Like, it's very much never been this good, I think. It's very much never been this good. And there is something to be said for that. Like, this is a pretty open metagame. There's a lot of playable cards, a lot more than there usually are. And I think that is, I don't think the Nah or Howard tier has ever been as small as it is right now. Hitmonkey is bottom tier? That's crazy. No, I have Hitmonkey in mid. I don't think Nah or Howard has ever been this small, relatively speaking, whenever I've done one of these tier lists. So I think there is something to be said for that. The fact that 6 cards are in Loki Shell or in top tier is nuts. I mean, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think you mostly don't run Hope in those decks now, but yeah, I mean, Loki's a really good deck. Loki's a really goddamn good deck, dude. Loki's really good. Oh, that is pretty straightforward to me, I think. But yeah, no, Loki's really good. It doesn't necessarily use all of them to its highest potential, but yeah, this is a really good deck. Okay. I think I'm set on that. I'm gonna do my outro now. Thank you so much for making it through that video. It's the longest video I've ever done. I think it's just a ridiculous thing. Keep an lookout for the deck tier list dropping tomorrow. I hope y'all, enjoy that. And I've been Cam Best. Thank you so much. Remember to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it.